And I now invite the distinguished representative of St. Lucia, delivering on behalf of the Caribbean community, to take the floor.
Good morning. Mr. President, I have the honor to address the General Assembly on behalf of the 14 member states of the Caribbean Community, Caricom, on Agenda Item 38, entitled Necessity of Ending the Economic, Commercial, and Financial Embargo Imposed by the United States of America against Cuba. The Caribbean community aligns itself with the statements delivered by the representative of Uganda on behalf of the Group of 77 and China, St. Vincent and the Grenadines on behalf of the Community of Latin America and Caribbean States, and the statement to be made by Azerbaijan on behalf of the non-aligned movement. Caricom extends its warm welcome and best wishes to His Excellency Bruno Rodriguez Parilla, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Cuba, who is with us today. Mr. President, we return to the General Assembly to reiterate the deep conviction of Caricom member states in support of the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, including respect for sovereignty, non-interference, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and the maintenance of friendly relations among states. We further reaffirm that there can be no exceptions for violation of international law if this United Nations is to live up to the commitments made by member states in signing the Charter. The unilateral economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed by the United States of America against Cuba is a clear violation of the Charter and international law. The extraterritorial application of third states' laws is contrary to the letter and spirit of the provisions of the Charter and abandons the principles of multilateralism to which we are all committed. For more than 3 decades, the General Assembly has consistently and overwhelmingly called for the lifting of the unilateral economic, commercial, and financial embargo on Cuba. Yet, the embargo persists in defiance of international law and of the numerous resolutions annually adopted by the General Assembly. Caricom strongly deplores the continued imposition of the embargo. We reiterate our concern about the profound negative impact of the measures continue to have on the socio-economic development of Cuba and on the livelihoods and well-being of the Cuban people. This embargo also serves as an impediment to the regional cooperation that Caricom maintains with Cuba. It is therefore imperative that Caricom joins the call again today for the immediate end to the embargo. Caricom further denounces the unwarranted designation of Cuba on the list of the state sponsors of terrorism as a measure which only serves to further compound the inhumane consequences of the embargo. Such a designation has no basis in fact. The articulation of a principled position on the serious issues confronting the planet does not constitute support for terrorism. Cuba is contending, just as member states, with the global fuel, food, and financial crises, the lingering impact of the pandemic, the climate emergencies, and the recovery from the catastrophic impact of past hurricanes. Its economic recovery and sustainability is significantly affected by the impact of the illegal and immoral embargo. The full application of the Helms-Burton Act including its Title III, has also enacted a devastating and inhumane toll on Cuba and its people, their economic recovery, and for the country's efforts to meet the thresholds set by the Sustainable Development Goals. Caricom and Cuba share a historic, extensive, and robust partnership based on mutual respect, solidarity, a shared commitment to Caribbean development and cooperation. Caribbean and Cuba commemorated in 2022 the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Cuba and the first 4 Caribbean states of Caricom. At this commemoration, Caricom and Cuba jointly reaffirmed the importance of continued and expanded cooperation towards the sustainable development of the countries of our region through agreements on economic, social, and environmental development. Caricom and Cuba continue to cooperate in such areas as health, education, trade, disaster risk reduction, and sports. Cuba was the first to deploy healthcare personnel to several Caricom member states in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic to augment our region's public health systems. These were in addition to healthcare personnel already assigned to many countries in our region who have played an ongoing role in supporting our country's efforts to improve access to healthcare. Cuba has also provided many tertiary and professional level scholarships, thereby supporting the human resource development of our Caribbean region. Mr. President, the close partnership between Caricom countries and Cuba is an enduring model of what South-South cooperation can accomplish towards achieving the SDGs. Caricom, Cuba, and the United States have a shared interest in a peaceful Caribbean. The underpinning by friendly relations among states of the region on the basis of mutual respect and mutual respect for international law. It is in that spirit that Caricom urges the United States to join with the rest of the international community in its call for an immediate end to the embargo and to resume the normalization of relations with Cuba. Caricom member states stand in full solidarity with Cuba and will support the resolution A/78/L5. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would now like to make the following remarks in my national capacity. The government of St. Lucia reaffirms its sacred commitment to the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations and to the principles of the sovereign equality of states, non-intervention and non-interference in the internal affairs of states, as well as the peaceful coexistence among nations. St. Lucia strictly adheres to the international legal doctrine of the exercise of sovereignty by member states in its lawful interest and its freedom to engage in commercial activity, trade, or economic cooperation. Accordingly, this long-standing matter of the unlawful economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed by the United States against Cuba continues to be of significant concern to the government and people of St. Lucia. We are of the view that our countries must continue to act collectively if we are to successfully address the current global challenges. The importance of these close ties between Cuba and our wider region was expressed by the Secretary General of the Caribbean Community last May, when she emphasized the great value of the strong and enduring bond between Caricom and Cuba and the excellent spirit of cooperation that has been of great assistance to us both bilaterally and regionally. In this context of regional cooperation, St. Lucia reiterates its deep appreciation for the support provided by Cuba to our National Health Service from the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. We also acknowledge Cuba's provision of medical personnel and medicines to support our health systems in many nations, including which were hardest hit by the virus. It should be emphasized that Cuba's assistance to and cooperation with St. Lucia in health and other sectors like education predates the coronavirus pandemic by many decades. The people of St. Lucia and the people of Cuba have enjoyed a warm, deep, and sincere friendship from our independence since 44 years ago. It continues to be evident that the obstacle of the punitive economic embargo faced by our sister state of Cuba for over half a century remains a severe and unjust hardship on the people of Cuba. St. Lucia remains in full compliance with its international obligations enshrined in the UN Charter not to promulgate any law, legislation, or measure, or take any other action that would infringe on the sovereignty of a state or its lawful national interest, or that would inhibit the freedom of commercial activity, trade, and economic cooperation. From a regional perspective, it is to be recalled that the Caribbean heads of government at their 45th regular meeting last July reiterated their call for the lifting of the unjust financial, economic, and commercial embargo against the government of Cuba and the people of Cuba. Accordingly, the government of St. Lucia reiterates its support for the successive General Assembly resolutions in which the General Assembly has called for an end to the economic, commercial, and financial embargo against Cuba. We fully support the draft resolution before us today. The unselfish assistance of Cuba to St. Lucia, the wider Caribbean, and globally in furtherance of regional socio-economic development and sustainability is legendary and is wholly consistent with the values and aspirations of cooperation among countries in the Global South. Such cooperation should be heralded, not impeded. The government of St. Lucia expresses our hope that the persistent resolution on this question is respected as the will of the overwhelming majority of the nations of the world. The deep fraternal bond that characterizes the relationship between St. Lucia and Cuba transcends boundaries, language, and ideologies. The indomitable spirit of the Cuban people remains an inspiration, and we reaffirm our fervent call to end this embargo. St. Lucia will always stand with Cuba on this matter. Thank you, Mr. President.